Live from the SABC's Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, welcome to this week's last episode of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo and thank you for joining us. It's the evening after, if there's such an expression, and on the show tonight we look at two things President Cyril Ramaphosa made pronouncements on last night and which, if they were to be carried through, could fundamentally change the course of the country. Here's the first one.
We've given ourselves 100 days to finalize what I call a comprehensive social compact to grow our economy, to create jobs, and to combat hunger.
Tonight, business, labor, and civil society representatives talk us through the journey traveled so far on those issues and how they see the next 99 days.
He's not here. I was moving around the laboratories. He's not there. Most of the time I find myself working with the deputies. Maybe that question you'll ask him, why most of the time the minister will work with the deputies rather than the man himself.
With the writing now on the wall for Police Commissioner Kehla Sithole, will his departure and everything else the president promised last night finally put the South African police on a new path? That's the question we are asking tonight as we speak to unions representing the country's men and women in blue. All that coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts now. Well, my first guests this evening represent three constituencies represented at the National Economic Development and Labour Council, NEDLEC. That's the forum where labour, business and community organisations, together with government, negotiate and seek cooperation on economic, labour and development issues facing our country. Kes Kuvadia is the CEO of umbrella business organisation, Business Unity South Africa. Tulani Chefuta is the convener of the civil society constituency. And of course, we also have on the line a representative of the Congress of South African Unions, one of several federations that are also represented at NEDLEC. Before we speak to them, take a listen to a bit of what the president had to say about this initiative, a social compact that he wants signed between all four constituencies represented at NEDLEC.
South Africa needs a new consensus, a consensus that is born out of a common understanding of our current challenging situation and a recognition of the need to address the challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. This should be a new consensus which recognizes that the state must create an environment in which the private sector can invest and unleash the dynamism of our economy. But equally, it is also an environment in which South Africans can live a better life and unleash the energy of their capabilities. This should also be a new consensus which embraces our shared responsibility to one another as South Africans and acknowledges that we are all in this together. And together, we must find solutions that will take our nation forward. As the social partners, being government, labor, business, and community-based entities, we are working to determine the actions we will take together to build such a consensus. We have begun discussions on what trade-offs are needed and what contribution we will each need to make to take this country forward. We have given ourselves 100 days to finalize what I call a comprehensive social compact to grow our economy, to create jobs, and to combat hunger.
Well, let's bring in our guests now. Matthew Parks from the Congress of South African Trade Unions, Cas Kuvadia from Business Unity South Africa, and Thulani Chefuta, who is the convener of the Civil Society constituency at NEDLAC. Good gentlemen, good evening. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Hi, Thulani and Matthew.
Now, first, maybe I should ask what your understanding is of this new consensus, comprehensive new consensus that the president referred to, Cas.
Yeah, so Leo, thanks for having us. You know, when we talk about a social compact, I think we need to be clear what we're saying, because we have been sort of social compacting at NEDLAC for the last 3 years or so on economic growth.
Certainly.
The four.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. Matthew, can you hear me? Because you are the only one I'm seeing.
I can hear you, Vuyo, loud and clear.
Okay, maybe then you should please help us. Same question I was asking Cas, just what your understanding of a social compact is and why it's necessary.
Sure, look, I think the challenges facing South Africa, be it workers, be it the economy, be it government, the society at large, are so huge that government on its own, business on its own, workers and community on their own cannot resolve them. But it's in a common interest for all of us to resolve them. These include the deepest economic recession in a century, a 46% unemployment rate, millions of workers having lost their jobs, having lost wages, collapsing state-owned enterprises, in particular weak ones like Eskom, Transnet, PRASA, SABC, Denel, etc., disintegrating municipalities who are unable to provide basic services. So I think all of us, we need to resolve this. All of us, be it government, business, or labor community, need these institutions to function. We need to grow the economy. So I think it's about seeing what can all of us do to contribute to resolving this, perhaps if necessary to sacrifice, and we're also needed to compromise. We have certain principles labor we think need to be critical to a social compact. We think it's critical that it's underpinned by protecting workers, especially low-income, working-class communities, about providing solidarity and relief to the poor. It also needs to be about addressing some of the inequalities and the legacies of apartheid and inequalities in our country. We have to look at critical measures and decisive measures because we are simply not moving enough speed as a situation the economy requires us to do so. Tinkering on the side and fixing this and fixing that is fine. But the challenges facing us are so great that it really requires bold and decisive leadership, and it has to be a progressive one. It cannot simply be about benefiting the elite or the rich. So, for example, there's been a lot of commentary in some media, some business quarters about saying, well, our problem are the labor laws. We don't want to go that route. We think, in fact, we need to look at the fundamental challenge facing the economy, which is unreliable and unaffordable electricity. It's about disintegrating railway network in the form of transit or metro rail. It's about corruption. It's about collapsing municipality and poor basic services, poor roads, water, sanitation, etc. So I think for us, we're keen to see those kind of issues, but we are also keen to see that we must always be progressive in what we do. We must look out for the working class, assist them to improve their lives, and we must also provide solidarity to the poor. It cannot be about throwing workers under the bus. It cannot be about expecting workers to suffer more or about abandoning the poor and the unemployed.
Okay. Cas, I don't know what happened there. Apologies if the fault was on our side. But from your vantage point, why do we need this compact?
I agree with Matthew that we all need to put our shoulders to the wheel together to address the problem in the country. The one nuance I would have, or maybe it's a difference, is that we can't look toward the social compact to decide on critical issues facing this country. So I think that a social compact cannot be seen as another mechanism for government to actually kick the can down the road. Our view would be that we need decisive leadership from government. We need government to take decisions after consulting, consult labor, consult business, consult community, and then take some decisions on how we're going to grow our economy, what the environment needs to be to actually promote investment, what sort of policies need to be put in place, and so on. And then on the back of that, we have a compact to say now government has given leadership after consultation. How do we all put our resources, our capacity, what trade-offs, what compromises are necessary to actually achieve all of this? And that's the sort of model we would like to see. I think in 100 days, sit down in a multi-sectoral forum and talk about what sort of environment we need, where we're going to take the economy and so on, I think will take us a long time. I agree with Matthew that it's not just building an economy for the elite. I think if we don't build an inclusive economy in which the majority of our people have a stake, that economy is not sustainable. So we've got to repurpose this economy post-COVID to ensure it is inclusive and the majority of people in this country have a stake in the economy. And in that way, we can actually grow this economy for all of our people. So that's what that would be our view of this.
Thulani Chefuta.
Well, thank you very much, Vuyo. A social compact is a byproduct of the process of social dialogue. So for there to be a social compact, the prerequisite is that all social partners must be willing to engage in social dialogue. It is the easiest thing to do to keep reciting the challenges that our country is confronted with. For the longest time ever, every leader who rises to the podium recites the fact that South Africa is confronted with the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And we recite the line to an extent that we begin to believe that by reciting it, we are providing a solution. And so a social compact then becomes that byproduct of a social dialogue where we agree on the priority challenges that are confronting our country, where we begin to appreciate that we will not be able to address all the challenges at the same time. There will have to be prioritization of the competing priorities. The process of social dialogue itself is the one that is going to facilitate trade-offs so that social partners do not enter the process of engagement with demands to another. For example, we say as civil society, we demand government to do 1, 2, 3. It should be about superior ideas that provide solutions to the challenges that we're confronted with. And in that process, yes, we must define what role should other social partners play, but equally, we must define a role for ourselves as to what are we going to do in the implementation of those solutions. The biggest challenge, though, is we tend to like the sound of our voices to a point where we begin to believe that the engagements themselves are the solution. No, they are only the means. We like the sound of our voices to a point where we can agree on 99 issues and disagree on one issue. We will leave all the 99 issues and focus on the one issue where we disagree. And action is going to be a significant game changer, or implementation, if you like, of what becomes of the beautiful social compacts that we get to agree on.
Matthew Parks, we as outsiders looking in and having been engaged in these conversations for a while, assume that in the conversations you've been having over the past couple of years, especially after COVID, you have been dealing with his issues comprehensively, and that you may be differing here or there, but generally speaking, you are or have found one another.
Yes, no, on many fronts we have found one another. There have been different elements, components of a social compact we managed to build in NEDLAC. I think we've seen a significant revival of NEDLAC in the last 3-4 years, and it really has become the central social dialogue venue for the country. And there have been successes. For example, we had the Presidential Job Summit. It had some challenges, but there was some successes there in terms of attracting investment. We had the National Minimum Wage Act, which has helped to improve the wages of 6 million workers across agriculture, domestic workers, construction, hospitality, retail, and so forth. It's had many increases, and it's been shown to actually help put money in workers' pockets. We've had very positive engagements. We formed together collectively with social partners the ESCOM Social Compact. We are seeing some green shoots in ESCOM. Leave aside the load shedding, but we are seeing some efforts at tackling corruption, wasteful expenditure, and so forth. Though much, much more needs to be done. We managed to do collectively together to develop an economic recovery plan in October 2020, focusing on ramping up local procurement as government, as business, as labor, as communities, to rebuilding the railway network, to tackling corruption. I think we've managed to work very, very closely together as social partners with government over the course of this pandemic on releasing over 63 billion rand from the Unemployment Insurance Fund, benefiting 5.5 million workers during the lockdown, helping them to buy food, helping companies to avoid retrenchments, keeping that relationship open. I think we've worked quite closely together on the various health and safety measures to deal with the pandemic at a workplace, in public venues, in society at large. And I think even around the vaccine rollout campaign, there has been challenges, but I think on 99% of the issues, as Tulani is saying, we have common interests. There are issues where you disagree, and that's fine. But there's enough that unites us as South Africans, irrespective of whether we are workers or community or government or business. I think for us, we have to focus on what are the critical issues. We don't have the luxury of time. I think all of us are opposed to corruption. All of us want to see Transnet and Metro Rail working. All of us want to see ESCOM back to its glory days. So I think for us, we have to focus on these things. We might not resolve everything in the next 100 days, but I think there is some areas we have common agreement on, for example, on corruption. Let's focus on those. Let's build momentum. Let's see how we can get further agreements after that.
Kes, assuming you agree with Matthew on that you have achieved or managed to achieve consensus on the issues or the list of issues that he has just mentioned. But of course, do feel free to add or subtract if you feel a need to do so. But what, from your point of view, separates you or is making it difficult? Or, as the president said last night, you need to now take forward?
Well, I think Matthew is correct. I think in the last 2 years, I would think, we've achieved more at NEDLAC than we've achieved in many years before that. And to a certain extent, I think it's because the pandemic or the crisis, we had to focus on it as all social partners, and we had to pull ourselves together to actually deal with the pandemic and deliver on vaccines. And I think that created a conditions where we began working very well together. And we began appreciating the fact that if we focus, we have one objective, we can actually work together, we can begin to put some of our differences aside and actually work in the national interest. So I agree with Matthew. I think we haven't done enough is that we really haven't begun to tackle the hard socioeconomic issues. So, what do we need to do? What do we mean when we say create an environment for investment? What do we mean when we say we want inclusive, sustainable economic growth? What sort of an economy do we want to see? How do we ensure that economy is actually inclusive and does, the majority of people have a stake and feel that they have a stake in the economy? So it's those issues and some of the sort of critical structural reform issues we need in the economy. And it's those sort of hard issues that I don't think we've tackled. What we have tackled at NEDLAC is and we all agreed to do this, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. What we have managed to do at NEDLAC is that we picked the low-hanging fruit, which was the correct thing to do, and we arrived at an economic recovery action plan on how we implement on that low-hanging fruit and how we begin to hold each other accountable for that. And I think we've been relatively successful at that. But I think the harder issues we still need to begin to tackle and talk about and see how we manage those.
Thulani, from where you sit, where do you see, the potholes and the caves and so on over the next, 99 days?
Well, of great interest for us is to make sure that everything we do in the chambers of NEDLAC is about the people and for the benefit of the people. We agree, for example, that we must fix our focus on increased investments that will lead to growth, which growth must be job-creating growth, was endeavors. On one side, when we build the confidence of the investors, we must equally build the confidence of the people on the same plans that we are developing, that when they are implemented and implemented to the latter, it is for the benefit of the people. We fundamentally do not believe that the economy is the economy for the sake of the economy and the few. We are of the firm belief that when we talk of a thriving economy, it must be an economy that finds expression on the daily lives of the people, that people can have a claim on, that people can confirm that indeed it is working for their benefit, it is creating employment opportunities for them, such that they can also be economically active citizens. And so when we do that, we will need to move from our traditional corners and view everything we do, firstly, for the benefit of South Africa Inc. and her people. And if we are fixed on that, we think it should be easy for us to find each other.
Matthew, Thulani talks about, traditional corners, and the president yesterday spoke about trade-offs that would be needed, which I interpret to mean sacrifices that each of the constituencies would have to make. What for you are the sort of things that you think Labour is prepared to look into in the context of what you've traditionally, or how you've traditionally carried yourself, the issues that you've put on the table, the issues that you weren't able or prepared to compromise on? What for you, where for you are opportunities for more engagement and dialogue where you may perhaps reconsider your initial or traditional positions?
Sure. Look, I mean, I don't think any negotiating partner will say what they're willing to offer immediately or compromise immediately. Negotiate is part of a process. But look, I think maybe the critical thing is what will Labour bring to the table? And I think maybe 5 key areas. One is that workers work. They provide the manpower, person power for government, for businesses. The economy is built upon workers. They work every day. Our nurses, our doctors are keeping patients alive in our ICUs from COVID-19. Our police officers, our Defence Force personnel have kept the streets safe. Our teachers teach our children. I think also is that during this period, there are 63 billion rand that is released from the Unemployment Insurance Fund, which we had to fight very hard for as COSATU, as organised labour, at times even when the government wanted to close the taps. That is workers' contributions. That is workers' money. We said this is a gift to the economy. It's a form of solidarity, even for those workers who were not contributing to the UIF, because we felt this is a greater good to enable these workers to survive, to enable companies to remain open and avoid retrenching. Our pension funds are invested across the economy, in government bonds, in the private sector, in the stock market. They really provide the basis for us, and we're willing to have engagement to see how can we ramp up our investments. We've been championing the need to amend Regulation 28 to allow pension funds, if they want to, and if it makes sense, to invest in infrastructure projects. We think that can help stimulate investments in infrastructure help grow the economy. We've often found that many trade unions have actually sought to address labour market stability issues at the workplace, trying to build productivity. We've highlighted for us key issues around the ways we think we can make the economy more productive. And, for example, Metro Rail. It was COSATU which initially drafted the ESCOM Social Compact. And we're saying there's much more work that needs to be done on the front. So there's quite a few things we're offering on the table. We can say, how can we enhance it? How can we improve it? We've had commitments around supporting local procurement. We've done well in some areas. We have not done as well in many other areas. But, for example, our clothing workers union has been championing local procurement in the clothing and textile industries. That has actually helped to keep factories open, help them to create new jobs. So we're trying to think also creative things out of the box. What more can we do? But we do think there's a need, for example, if government wants to say, well, can workers, contribute? We also want to see politicians leading from the front. We would love to see politicians and the captains of industry not complain about public service wage bill or what workers earn, which is often very little, but actually see a cut in what politicians and the captains of industry earn. We'd like to see some solidarity from their side because they honestly are well off and can afford to significantly tighten the belts. We are keen, we've been engaged with our union to say what more can we do to expose corruption, which really decimates public services and SOEs. We think we need to do more in that regard. But equally, many of our workers are often afraid to blow the whistle on corruption because some of them have been murdered. We had some municipal workers assassinated in Vembe for blowing the whistle on VBS corruption. And we've not seen any perpetrators being brought to the book. So it is we think we can push, we're keen to contribute, but also we need to have the support of our social partners of government as well to make it a success. So really, it takes more than one person to tango in this regard for you.
Okay. Now, Cass, Matthew just spoke about politicians having to, lead from the front. And I would imagine that's what you were referring to earlier in your opening remarks when you spoke about, the tendency to kick the can down the road and the need for the government to lead. Is it your sense, or am I to assume, or am I correct in interpreting your initial input to mean that, it's in the nature of these kinds of conversations that you've been having at NEDLAC over the past, couple of years especially, that, each constituency will stick to its mandate and the positions by and large, even though, as you are saying, all of you are saying, you've made some real progress over the past couple of years. But it's in the nature of the kinds of conversations you get involved in, given the challenges facing our country, that people will stick to their guns. So there has to be a point at which the government says, I've listened to every one of you, but it's in the interest of the country for us to move in this particular direction and actually be firm on that, as long as it is fair to everyone and broadly it's in the interests of us all.
Yeah, so we would prefer that. Because what we need in this country, most of all, in our view, is certainty and an indication from government to not just investors, but to the citizens of this country, that those we have elected to govern us are actually serious about governing. Absolutely government must consult. They must consult with us, they must consult with labor, they must consult with community groups and others. But to try to actually have a view that says that those consultations must reach some sort of consensus across all the stakeholders, that's just not going to happen, with all due respect. It's just not going to happen. And so I don't think government should try to reach consensus through its consultation. It should consult, take those consultations very seriously. It should then perhaps bring us together to say, look, we've heard you guys, this is the direction we're taking, but for that we need trade-offs and compromises, and then we sit and talk about the trade-offs and compromises. But if we have a government that's giving the direction, that's taking the hard decisions, that then helps to bring us closer together around those decisions, but Those decisions are taken by government after consultation. So I don't think we should get into consultation paralysis. And I think that's one of the problems in the country. So we would prefer a government that talks to us, talks to labor and community, talks to us multilaterally, listens to what we've got to say, but then takes decisions that are in the national interest. And we then have some certainty around those decisions, and we can work together to actually make those things happen.
Last thought from you, Thulani, when you said we need a prioritization of priorities. Any thoughts around how we can proceed on that one and perhaps reflect from the experiences of the past couple of years where you think that is not happen or that has tended to be one of the key problems?
Well, the most important thing that social compacting must help us to do is to agree interest. We develop a minimum program of action around which we all agree. And I'm calling it minimum program of action deliberately, because it is those lowest common denominators that we agree that if implemented, they will have a ripple effect in all aspects of society that we are discussing and agreeing upon. When you enter into a minimum program of action, it means that there are things that as civil society we would have to go out and do over and above that which is in the minimum program of action. The same with business, the same with labor, the same with government. And so out of that, we will then not only be able to see what do we stand to benefit as communities, but what can we contribute in the same discourse? Let me make a practical example. Communities, if are to make some of the compromises, cannot wake up to ban a clinic when they demand water, because the next day they will cut the taps to demand the very same thing that they may have banned. And so those are hard conversations that we must truthfully take out to our communities and say, if we are to progress, these are the things that we must count as part of our contribution in the process. Over time, we have tended to believe that the final product or the achievement of social dialogue is the paper that we produce and agree on and sign on. No. We must begin to redefine success to mean that the things that are in the compacts and the agreements that we sign must be implemented in such a way that if it is the ESCOM compact, which is fundamentally about sustainable and affordable provision of energy, such that we do not have to endure load shedding and all those other disruptions, then success must be defined by people receiving affordable and sustainable energy. And so I think those are the bottom lines as success factors that we must keep holding each other against and accountable.
Gentlemen, let's leave it there for tonight. Let me thank you all for agreeing to come through. Kesko Vadia, CEO of Business Unity South Africa, Thulani Chefuta, who is the convener of the community constituency at NEDLEC, and Matthew Parks, who is from Federation COSATU, who will, of course, continue to interrogate the President's State of the Nation address over the next week, picking on various topics. But we thought we could start with this one, as it is in many ways the sort of umbrella a topic for what is to come around an economic recovery plan. The president saying they've given themselves 100 days to finalize a comprehensive social compact to grow the economy, create jobs, and combat hunger. After the break, what police unions make of the promises the president made yesterday about the future of policing in the country.
We will soon be announcing leadership changes in a number of security agencies to strengthen our security structures. Now, the staffing of the Public Order Policing Unit of the South African Police Service will be brought to an appropriate level, with appropriate training in place as well. We are going to make resources available to recruit and train an additional 12,000 new police personnel to ensure that the South African Police Service increases its capacity. Another area of immediate attention will be the re-establishment of community policing forums to improve relations and coordination between local police and residents of the areas they serve. It is clear from the observation of the expert panel that we need to take a more inclusive approach to assessing the threats to our country's security and determining the necessary responses. I'm calling on all South Africans through their various formations to participate as we go ahead to develop this whole process of a strategy.
Well, Mpho Kwinika is from the Independent Policing Union of South Africa, IPUSA, and Peter Nzime is from the South African Police Union. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you very much for your time. If I counted correctly, 4 key announcements from the president. They're going to, be announcing changes to leadership. They're going to staff public order policing. There's going to be more recruitment, 12,000 new police, and the establishment of community policing forums. Is that, from where you sit, Mpho Kwinika, what the police need right now?
Those police need good leadership. You can have all of these things. If you don't have leadership, it is as bad as not having anything at the before. I think the president has made a very good call. At least we all know that the president is aware of the problem which is affecting policy in this country.
What is that problem?
So the issue of leadership, you will see that you spoke about the problem of the security cluster. We have already taken the policy of the SSA, security office, something that we are not happy about, but in the interest, that is the only thing that we can do. You will also understand this, that crime in our country continues to spiral out of control. You will also have noticed that the state buildings which are constitutional institutions of this country, the democratic institutions of this country, have been under attack. So, what we said yesterday, trying to assure South Africans that we do something about it.
Okay, we seem to have a problem with your line. I'm going to ask Peter Nzime while we try to sort that sound problem to come in. From where you sit, Peter, does what the president, the announcements the president made yesterday, do they offer a solution to the problems of policing in this country?
No, good evening, Voyo, and to your viewers. Look, as the South African Policing Union, we feel that the president is late to announce that today and now. The president knows exactly that there is a problem in the police as we speak. We all know that crime is out of control in this country. We all know that 50 people plus are being killed every day in this country. We all know that women and children are being killed, and it is known to the president. We all know that the president knows the beef between the Minister of the Police and the Commissioner of the Police, and is not addressing that matter. We all know that there is a problem in the intelligence environment, intelligence unit in the police. There is no leadership there. We all know that as a result of no leadership is intelligence, then you do not have people who can prevent crime, who are only dealing with detection of crime, who are not preventing crime. We all know that currently the president is seated with the representation from the Commissioner of the Police that talk to the Board of Inquiry to hold office since September last year. We all know that there is a judgment from court which was issued, a damning judgment against the commissioner in January. That judgment is with the president. Only now the president is telling us about the shortage and to beef up members of the police. We all know that there is a problem with budget. Every year we see the government cut the budget of the police. Today we are told that 12,000 members will be employed. We've been calling for specialized unit in this country. We all know that there is a Marikana panel of expert report that was never implemented. Now we're waiting for another expert report that needs to be implemented. President is not doing anything about it. We all know that there is politicians that are involved in themselves in the affairs of the police. So what the president is saying is something that we have already stated before. That make sure that we...
But then do you not think that he is at the very least beginning to address that? I mean, if you have been complaining, as you have, about, staffing, he's saying there's going to be new recruits, 12,000 of them. If, as you're saying, there were problems at leadership level, he has alluded to that he'll soon be announcing leadership changes. Is he not then, are you not prepared to even acknowledge that he is at the very least beginning to now address the concerns that you've been raising over and over again?
You don't wait for the SONA or State of Nation address to address that. You wait, as and when you get this report, you act on it. A crime is not something that you have to wait for years or for a State of Nation to address issues that affect people. I'm saying to you, 52 people have been, more than 50 people are being killed in this country every day. So why would the president wait to come and bring the police or to beef up the police? The Marikana panel of expert report, it gathered dust in the office of the Minister of the Police. Only now that you are talking about implementation of that, it can't be correct. Now we are saying in South African Policing Union, it is wrong for the president to say this is something that's going to be implemented now, when he knows where lies the problem. As we speak, there is no head of intelligence. The challenge between the Minister of the Police and the Commissioner of the Police, both of them, currently they are fighting. They are not talking to one another. Why will the president wait for the State of Nation address to talk about change of leadership? We are saying, if we want to change, let the president remove both of them. He must remove the Minister of the Police. He must remove the Commissioner of the Police and get somebody neutral, preferably a woman in the police, who is a career person in the police, a career woman in the police, who must come and take over the reins of the police. That is the only solution that the president will show us that is dealing with this issue. The people that you are talking about that are going to be employed, they are going to take another 12 months. That 12 months is a training process. What is going to happen in the next 12 months, Voyo? People are still being killed. We are not having a short-term solution. We are giving us a long-term solution. What is happening with the short-term solution? Because crime is out of control in this country.
In fact, Peter, you've answered on your part the question I was going to ask next, and I'm going to ask Mpho Akwinika for his own opinion on this. But before I do that, Mpho, I want both of you to listen to this clip. Is a conversation that our colleague Bulelani Philip had with the Minister of Police last night, which for me, taken together with what the President said about going to announce leadership changes soon, can only boil to or suggest one thing. But take a listen to that conversation last night after the State of the Nation address.
I want the general, I want the National Commissioner that will work together in a full understanding that our job is not the alignment to the factions, as there's been a call of that, but the person that when it comes to the crime intelligence, we are together, we are working in unison, both physically and mentally, and both in understanding that our first prize is to deal with the crime rather than any other thing.
Lastly and quickly, Minister, are you working together? That's the question.
Well, up to this point, especially on the latter part of our, even today, he's not here. I was moving around the laboratories, he's not there. Most of the time I find myself working with the deputies. Maybe that question you'll ask him, why most of the time the minister will work with the deputies rather than the man himself.
What do you make of that, Mpo?
Well, he's trying to say that there isn't any relationship, working relationship between the two of them.
But we all knew that, didn't we?
Yeah, we do know about that because they both have got different responsibilities. The National Commissioner of Police is responsible for operational issues of the police. The Minister of the Police Executive is the politicians of that department. Whether they like each other or not, they have got a duty to come together and carry out the plans that are supposed to be for a good policing in this country. So they don't have to like each other, they have to work together.
Well, Paul says seemingly they can't, so they should both go. What is your view?
I don't think we need to first say, what is it that makes people to say they both should have to go? If we talk about the insurgency that took place in this country in July last year, that is an operational issue. I think you have heard the National Commissioner of Police in Jabulani when he was asked about his comments about what happened with the looting that took place in that environment. He said, we are learning from it. We don't learn. We have appointed a capable National Commissioner of Police. That's what all South Africans know, and that's what all of us know. We did not appoint a person who's going to learn. You don't go to a theater with a doctor who says to you, I am going to operate you for the first time today. You rise from that bed and go straight home. We have got capable men and women in blue who can be good National Commissioners of Police as prescribed by the Constitution of this land.
Wow. Looks like we still have a long way to go then. If comments from both of you in the few minutes we had suggest that what the president announced yesterday doesn't go far enough, then it means we're in this for a long haul. And any hopes that the situation may change for the better, really, or you don't, at least you, the two of you, Mpho Gwinika from the Independent Policing Union of South Africa and Peter Nzime from the South African Policing Union, don't share those sentiments. And that's where we're going to leave it for this evening, all we had time for. Please do join us again on Monday next week. Do have a good night and a great weekend.